So we are going to begin with the for loop. The for loop, you know that it's a type of loop which is generally used when the number of iteration is not fixed. But before giving you the general syntax or how to use it, we are going to learn there are certain characteristics which are special to the for loop. Number one, it is an entry control loop. And when I tell entry control loop, what does it mean? It means that before entering the loop, it checks for the condition, and only if the condition is true, the statements inside the body of the loop gets executed. So that is how it works, an entry control loop. That is, it checks for the condition first, and only when the condition is true, it's going to execute the statement or group of statements inside the body of the loop. So that's the first condition. And please remember, whenever I am writing on the board, I make sure that you also keep a note in your notebook, because this is what we require for solving questions related to section A part of the question paper. In the meanwhile, let me tell you how the ICSE question paper is. The ICSE question paper is of 100 marks, and it has been broadly divided into two sections named section A and section B. Section A consists of 40 marks and section B consists of 60 marks. Section A is the theory, and when I tell that it's theoretical doesn't mean that it's question answer type. What you're going to get is you need to have a deep understanding of the programming part, and once you are able to have the deep understanding of the programming part, the theory will be simply a piece of cake for you. You will just move across it like a breeze. So it doesn't matter whether you do not have the ability to mug up everything completely. Mugging up question answers will be maximum 2 to 4 marks, and that too, those questions are very easy. Rest is you need to have a deep understanding of programming. And section B is completely programming, and here you'll be given you'll be asked to solve 4 programming questions, each consisting of 15 marks. Remember, 60 marks is section B. Out of, obviously you have a choice out of 6 questions. Now that is why keeping notes of whatever I am writing on the board is very important. So here the for loop, the first condition was the first characteristic was entry control loop. Next, initialization condition, also called test expression, and updation are generally written on the same line. Generally, not necessarily. I'll give you examples where it is not written in the same line, but in general it's written this way. Next, generally used when the number of iteration is fixed. So when the number of iteration is fixed, then we generally use the for loop. And when I tell the number of iteration is fixed, that means how many times the body of the loop gets executed. If it is fixed, that is fixed number of times if it gets executed, only then we use the for loop. But it is not necessarily, we may also use a for loop when the number of iteration is not fixed. But this is whatever I am telling you in terms of for loop is general in nature. So don't start thinking that we can do interconversion. Yes, of course you can do interconversion of different type of loops which are available in Java, but for loop is generally used when the number of iteration is fixed. For example, if I ask you to display the first 10 natural numbers, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till 10. So this will require perhaps the best method of doing it is using a for loop. But if I tell you that extract the different digits in a number, and the number is to be given by the user, in that case for loop is not very suitable, though we can use it. So that is because a number may consist of any number of digits. When the user starts entering or giving input to the computer, in that case it may be 25, that is consisting of 2 digits, or it may be 1346. In that case, it has 4 digits. So it may be any number of digits. In that case, for loop is not suitable, but not that you won't be able to use. So generally, for loop is used when the number of iteration is fixed. So now, first of all, before getting into more details, first of all, we are going to learn the syntax of the for loop. So now, what we are going to do is we are going to learn the syntax of the for loop. So syntax means how do we write it? So how do we write it? We first begin with for followed by initialization. That is the variable which is used for initializing the value of a variable, which will be used for controlling this particular loop, also called control variable. I'll come across that later. And then what do we have? We have the condition. And then we have the condition followed by updation. And here we have the body of the loop within the opening and closing brace. So here you can see the for loop. You have one particular parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis, inside which all initialization, condition and updation is written in general. So this is the general syntax of the for loop, where everything is written over there. And the body of the loop contains statements which needs to be executed repeatedly, in the sense that as long as the condition or the given condition is true, this particular the statements or statement which are written within this opening and closing brace is executed repeatedly. So now what I'm going to do is, to illustrate this further, I am going to give you an example of a for loop. So now I'm going to give you a complete example of a for loop. We'll begin with a program. So here we have a class named example, followed by the function static void main. And here what I have is, I have a variable, say int I, and here I'm going to write a program which is going to display the first 5 natural numbers. So this is the initialization part, this is the condition, and this is the updation. And here we have the body of the loop, and inside the body of the loop I'm going to write this statement. So this is what I'm going to do, and let's try to understand what is happening over here. I'm going to write the value of I out here, what is going to happen, and here I'm going to write the output. So here you see I is equal to 1. So that means the first value of I is 1. That's called the initialization. So please remember, initialization is the first thing or the first part of a loop which gets executed inside a for loop. So initialization and executed once, and it will be executed only once, just for the first time. And then after that, after the initialization part, it goes for the updation and it goes for the test expression. So here what we have is I is 1, and now you check over here, or rather the computer is going to check whether the condition is true or not. Yes, the condition is true, that is 1 is less than 5, so it enters the loop and executes this statement. So in this statement, what is there? Print out system.out.println I. So it's going to definitely print the value of I, that is 1, because the value of I is 1 initially. So it's going to display 1. And after this, before it comes to the closing brace, it will again get back to the updation part. So here you see initialization, condition, execute the body of the loop and get back to the updation part. In the updation part, remember I++. I++ means increment the value of I by 1. That means this could have also been written in this form, I plus equals to 1, or it could have been written this way, I equal to I plus 1, more explicitly. I plus plus or plus plus I, that means both increment decrement operators, but that doesn't mean you can use only increment or decrement operators. Suppose, say for example, I'll give you an example, I need to increase the value of I by 5. So in that case, please write I plus equal to 5 or I equal to I plus 5, but don't make 5 plus over here, 5 plus symbols over here and expecting it to increment 5 times. No, nothing of that sort is there in Java. In Java, we have only plus plus and minus minus, either before the variable or after the variable. Anyway, here the value of I is incremented, that is incremented by 1. And if you think it explicitly, how it works, I equal to I plus 1, I was 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, so the new value of I is 2. And after this updation, it gets back to the condition, whether the condition is true or false. So here the condition is still true, because 2 is less than 5. So the value of I is 2, and since the condition is still true, again the body of the loop gets executed, that is display I, so it's going to display the next value of I, that is 2. And again it comes to the updation, next value of I is 3, and condition is still valid, print I, it's going to print 3. Again it comes over here to the updation part, the value of I becomes 4, and the condition is still valid, print I, it's going to print 4. Next, the value of I will be incremented once again, so the value of I is 5, and the condition is still true, and display I is going to print 5. And then again it goes to the updation part, so it becomes 6, and the condition for the first time, it's not true. That is 6 is neither less than nor equal to 5. So it exits from the loop. Exit means it comes over here. That means the statement after the closing brace of the for loop. So if there is any statement you write over here, it will be executing only after executing this particular loop. Only after all the iterations are done, only then this part gets executed. So in this case, we are going to get the output as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Just one point I would like to mention out here is, you see, just like if-else statement, if there is only one statement inside the body, that is inside the opening and closing brace, inside this particular block, giving the braces is optional. That means had I not written this braces, it would have still worked, because there is only one statement. However, if there is more than one statement, say for example one more system.out.print over here, or some kind of calculation over here which is to be repeatedly executed, in that case it is essential to give the opening and closing braces. However, if there is only a single statement, giving braces is optional. So next we are going to begin with the variants of a for loop. That is, what are the different ways we can write a for loop. So first, let me tell you, initialization and updation are optional. So that means it is not essential to write the initialization or updation inside the entry point of the for loop, which you have learned using the general syntax. I'll give you an example to illustrate this. For example, this is normally what we do using the general syntax. For I equal to 1, I less than equal to 5, I plus plus, and here I write, say the body of the loop contains system.out.println I, and we have the closing brace. Suppose this is the for loop which I write over here. Here you see the initialization is out here. Now what I'm going to do is say int I is out here. Initialization I'm going to do it outside. So during declaration I can do the initialization int I equal to 1. Note that this initialization I'm doing it completely outside the loop. And then we have for followed by semicolon, since the initialization is done before the loop. And here we have the condition, and the condition is suffixed and prefixed using the semicolon. And the updation we are not going to write over here. Followed by opening brace, and we write the same statement. Note that the updation is not written over here because it's optional. And before this closing brace, I'm going to write the updation part. So you see, very simple. This is the way of, one more way of using the for loop. However, this looks more cryptic. I think this looks more explicit and more easier to understand compared to this. However, you may get questions related to this in section A. There is no syntax error or no error out here. This is perfectly valid because initialization and updations are optional part inside a for loop. Next, infinite. Infinite loop, what actually it means is where the condition is always true. That means infinite loop is such a loop which never ends. It carries on, executing endlessly. So that's called an infinite loop. So here what we are going to learn is, we are going to learn how to create an infinite loop. That is a loop whose condition is always, it always results to true, and the loop continuously executes endlessly. So this is what I'm going to do. Say for example, this is the first example of this initialization part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very simple trick. I'm going to ensure that the condition is always true. How do I do that? Say for example, I equal to 1, I is greater than 0 and I plus plus. So this is a very simple trick which is applied. Now you see, whatever statement you write within the body of the loop, it doesn't matter. This loop is going to execute infinite times because the value of I is greater than 0. And you see what is happening. I is initially 1 and 1 is obviously greater than 0. So the statements inside the body of the loop gets executed. I plus plus, the next value of I is 2 and 2 is also greater than 0. So therefore again it gets executed. I plus plus I is 3. So the value of I is always greater than 0. So this is a very simple trick through which we will be able to create the infinite loop. You see, there is one more method by which we can do that. Same thing. I equal to 1 and we can explicitly write over here true. You see, it's not necessary to put a condition. You can explicitly write over here true. So that means it will understand that the test expression is always true and the loop will continuously execute. So whatever statement you have over here, it will continuously get executed because the condition is forever true. There is one more method of writing this, that is for I equal to 1 and we have I plus plus over here. So here these statements will get executed. Now notice the difference. Here we don't even write that, explicitly writing, true over here. So when we explicitly do not write true over here, it means that it's true. Implicitly, Java assumes it to be true and therefore this loop gets continuously executed endlessly in the form of an infinite loop. So this is how we create an infinite loop using a for loop. We'll continue with our, examples on the different variants of a for loop, and I believe you are keeping notes. In case you miss out something, please rewind your video and pause the video, take the notes, and ensure that you have all these materials written in your copy. It will be of much help when we start solving questions related to this chapter. So now we'll begin with the third type of variant, that is empty loop. Empty loop or delay control loop. You see, when it comes to empty loop, empty in the sense that this is a loop without a body. And when I tell that it's a loop without a body, then a question may arise, what is the point in having a loop? Because loop is generally used where we have a statements which are obviously written inside the body of the loop to be executed repeatedly. But here, in an empty loop, it sounds a bit, a kind of a fallacy that it's a loop without a body. And if you do not have a body, you don't have statements or any group of statements to be executed repeatedly. In that case, what is the point in having a loop? Of course, there are usage even if you have a loop without a body. I'll give you an example. Well, before this example, let me start with it. You must have seen this. You must have used Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel or Microsoft PowerPoint generally. These are, small courses which you do in the lower classes. So when you start with it, you must have seen that, you first get a splash screen showing, starting Microsoft Word with a certain version number, or starting PowerPoint. It shows an advertisement in a rectangular box, and then after that it starts the entire application. The entire window comes up. So first of all, this advertisement which is being shown is because of the delay control loop. What actually happens is, suppose we have a program, this lines indicates a program, and here this is the box, say for example, where we have the advertisement, and these three lines are displaying this advertisement. Now, if the entire application starts from here, say. So, if I want this advertisement to be shown first, then what do? It displays these advertisements, and then I should make sure that this particular advertisement or this particular box remains for certain number of seconds. Say for example, it should remain for 5 seconds. So, what I do is I create a for loop over here, or a delay control loop rather over here, and ensure that this loop executes for a certain while. That means what actually happens is this particular advertisement will remain over here for a certain amount of time. And only when this loop finishes its execution, it will start executing this part, that is the lines below it. So this is how the empty loop finds its usage. Generally, you will not use it, but in any case, you need to understand how this particular loop works. So this is what we have. For I equal to 1, I less than equal to 100,000, say 1 lakh, I plus plus, and note that empty loop always, is suffixed with semicolon, indicating that this particular loop do not have a body. Now what happens is, say for example, this particular statement is written over here. Now for executing 1 lakh times, naturally it takes certain amount of time. Until then, this particular advertisement will still be there present on your screen. And only when this loop finishes executing or iterating 1 lakh times, the statements after this gets executed and the entire applications gets loaded into the screen. So this is how the delay control loop works. So it has some usage, not that it do not have any kind of usage. That's it. That is what we learn or what we have in a for loop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a set of questions which you're going to find later, and these questions you are supposed to solve and send it to me in my mailbox, and there I'm going to check it and again give it back to you.